Welcome back to Myth and Meaning. This is episode 14, The Next Hierarchy. And Myth and Meaning is the show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brok.
we break down and try to condense some of the mythological significance of pieces of fiction. Today, we are finishing up season 1 of Dragon Ball. We're going to talk about the next hierarchy, and obviously here we have some symbolism. Anything to say before we get started?
No, I think we should just dive into it. I want to go ahead and hear what you have to say about this symbol here on our title card.
Yes, this is the statue of Odysseus, and if anyone hasn't read the Odyssey, just for a preface, Odysseus is the one that makes the Trojan horse to end the Trojan War. He has to travel, I think, 14, 15 years, something like that. It's a long time. He travels the ocean, and he meets all kinds of monsters, and mythologically, he battles in different hierarchies. And he is representative. Athena is the one that really supports Odysseus as kind of his patron god, because he represents the wisdom that he gains from each of these experiences and allows him to come back to Ithaca. This is in Ithaca, by the way, the statue, to reconquer his already conquered domain.
Right, it's
So
the return to civilization.
Yes, it is the return journey. And in the story, his son and his wife are having troubles there that need to be solved by his presence. He's not there at the time because of the Odyssey, etc., etc. But this is the return. It's the end of the hero's journey. So everyone needs to go back to where they came from. And that's kind of the spirit that we get in this episode. And so that's why I chose Odysseus.
Well, it's a great symbol of the rejuvenating nature of the journey, right? That you bring back the gold from the dragon, that you bring back the wisdom from the chaos, and then rejuvenate society as far as you can conceptualize it.
Right, and that's I think that's exactly what happens, particularly for two of our characters that kind of have their eyes open in this episode. But we'll see that in a minute. Anything else about Odysseus?
No, I think a small thing that I would like to add to that is it definitely ties into more Buddhist type ideas as well, where it sort of, how do I want to say it there's this idea of losing the ego consciousness and then confronting chaos, gaining wisdom, becoming wise, right? And then returning back and bringing that wisdom with you. And it's a Buddhist truism that I think essentially that it would be better,
what
right,
happens in Journey
to
to the
never
West.
go back into nirvana, but instead to stay, to always be, as long as there's one person who has not achieved nirvana, you need to stay and spread the wisdom on the mortal plane.
And what happens in Journey to the West is they go on the journey to find the scrolls. And what are the scrolls?
Wisdom.
The wisdom along the way. Right. It's a very Buddhist idea, but the Greeks also discovered it. Interesting.
That sounds, I don't know, it doesn't sound too Western to me.
It's almost like these ideas transcend culture.
Well, that's what we were talking about in the first episode, and I think this is a great way to cap off that idea when we were talking about the idea of the isolated culture and how these archetypes sort of manifest themselves in cultural symbols.
Absolutely, yeah. And that actually brings us to our next point here, because we have Bilbo coming back with the treasure. Luke Skywalker landing back on Yavin 4 with his medal, with the bringing back order to the society, right?
The medal being a symbol of the gold, right?
Right, exactly. And so we have these two archetypes that do the exact thing we were just talking about. And now Oolong is asking too. And remember that Oolong is Bluma's masculine spirit. He has to say this. He's the one that has to say, where are we going next?
He is a motivating principle for Bulma.
Much like Prince Philip, let's say, and we'll get there too.
But like if Prince Philip was the fool, right? Because
Right.
he's not integrated properly.
Precisely.
But yeah, so we have him here saying that, what do we do? Because at this time that he's saying this, I think Goku's still unconscious, right?
Yes.
And so we kind of have Goku, I'm going to explicitly say it a bit more here, being a symbol of the self is something that, while that idea, let's say, is unconscious to you, then you're kind of here in this disconnected state, right? And so we have Bulma basically thinking like, this was my journey, because Goku really was coming along with Bulma originally. And now, while Goku's unconscious, she doesn't really know what her journey is. And so she's been transformed by her encounter with Goku. She doesn't really have a direction without integrating what Goku represents, which is the self, the good, higher order logos principle.
And contrarily, too, now that Goku has fulfilled this process of subordinating himself to the higher ideal of hierarchies in general, he is able to manifest his own path. And we're going to get to that, too.
Right. I think it's just great because you want to look at the first season of an anime and say, okay, like this is how we're going to introduce the protagonist's journey, right? And none of the first season of Dragon Ball is Goku's journey. Goku is along for the ride for this journey, and he represents the proper way to deal with the journey,
because the journey
that doesn't have to do with the hero's story necessarily.
Right, because the journey is the archetypal male and female. It's what needs to be learned early on first as a foundation before other hierarchies can even be climbed.
Right, it's duality. This is Genesis.
Yes, and that's exactly why it comes first. And so then we do have Goku wake up, and now that he's been separated from the shadow, he is able to more embody the logos, which is what's going on in this picture, and he's able to form his path, manifest it, and he even tells them, I think in the couple slides from now, that he's going to train with Roshi, right?
Right. He, which we'll kind of get to that because there's a separation that happens there where they diverge and they have to inevitably come back together. I'm curious to hear, sort of your interpretation or your explanation of the fact that now, as Goku has regained his consciousness, as he's come back from the encounters of the last episode, he's missing three things, right?
Right, he's missing his tail, his Noibo, and his Dragon Ball.
Right, so all of these things being tied into ancestry.
But what does he still have? The vision of the hero, the eye of Horus, right?
Well, this is something that you retain.
Mm-hmm. It can't be taken away. That vision
Yeah.
can't be taken away by other forces. Only you can blind yourself, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it this way. Only someone who chooses to put on those sunglasses can become like Roshi.
Right.
And so that's why I put the eye up there. And
well, Goku also, in this state, still retains the ability to speak truth and to change the world with those magic words, too.
That's all he has right now. That's why I wanted to put these things, is because that's when you strip Goku down to all his basic parts, this can't be taken away from him.
And it's interesting that these are now essential aspects of Goku, right? That he did not have whenever the story started.
Right, they will be for the rest of Goku's existence.
Yes.
All right, and so let's get to those things, because we do have pieces. I think we do have exactly 3 pieces for each of these things. So the first thing that Goku's missing is the Noibo.
Right, the power pole. The extending pole.
The extending blade.
Mm-hmm.
You've been vanquished by my blade.
Not only an extending blade, an extending ancestral blade.
Right, and that's the thing. It is, there's, the comparison is there. This is the ability for Luke to even operate on the hierarchy of his father, right, is to use this weapon. And it's the same way that Goku, the only way that he can solve some of these issues, especially early on, was with the power of the ancestral spirit.
Yeah, I don't want to go off on a tangent about Star Wars or anything, but it's very interesting how, the lightsaber transcends physical material, right? In the same way
Yes.
that not the Noibo does, but it's almost like a condensing of like magic words plus the Noibo. So I just wanted to point that out.
And there's a lot to the Star Wars analogy here, but just I wanted to bring one of those pictures in. So that is one of the things he's missing is the Noibo, that ancestral strength bequeathed to him by his grandfather, here by Luke's father. And so then we have Goku's his grandfather's Dragon Ball is what he's the other thing he's missing, right? I mean, he's missing his tail. He can't really get that back right now, so we'll pass on that for now.
We'll get back to that conversation whenever he gets it back.
Right. But we will say, I will say that this is exactly it. Searching for searching for the wisdom of one's ancestors is nourishing to the spirit, and that's why I have the rune of communion.
Exactly. Well, what's the first thing that we see Goku do in the entire series?
Is pray to his grandfather's Dragon Ball.
Right. He's trying to commune with his grandfather.
Yes.
Because he's associated the Dragon Ball with his grandfather.
Communion, exactly. So I'm glad you got that. I don't know if you got that before we talked about it, but yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that is what nourishes Goku's spirit here. And the last thing is the Heartsbane here, and that's a reference to Game of Thrones. It's the ancestral sword of the Tarleys. And and I wanted to put it because it is more physical manifestation rather than the Noibo or a lightsaber. It is physically manifested.
I do want to throw in a little bit here on the Game of Thrones front, where...
Yeah, let's tie it together.
We do have a family that loses their ancestral blade, right? The Lannisters do not have an ancestral blade anymore by the time of the beginning of the story because I can't remember his name. The cousin goes out on a journey, takes it with him out into pure chaos and never comes back with it, right? And so I kind of attribute the dysfunction of the Lannister family as not being able to regain this thing. It's a symbol, right?
And that's actually why I chose this one specifically because this gets taken by, actually that's not canon. This is not in the books. But this is the ancestral sword, like I was saying, of the Tarleys. And here we see Bluma bequeathing her ancestral boon to Goku. Now, the other thing is that we're likely to see this sword get lost or get taken by someone who's not meant to have it, let's say. And that's kind of what I'm drawing the association with because Bluma does lose her capsules. Right. She still has this piece of it, but she did lose her capsules.
Well, let's talk about the Dragon Radar for just a second, just to condense what the idea is, right? So this is something that she can bequeath onto Goku, right? And the idea of it being a dragon radar, we've associated the dragon with chaos and the chaos with the feminine, the inherited boons of Bulma's ancestry as a feminine spirit, right? And so it's almost like she's saying, take this feminine experience, the experience of having known me for this journey, and through it you can find these droplets of chaos. And in those droplets of chaos is also your grandfather. Mm-hmm. That which you seek lies where you least want to look, right?
Right, exactly. No, that's a perfect encapsulation. I think we'll go on to the big one where I'm going to pass it off to you.
So what we have happening is the realization between Bulma and Yamcha that they have inadvertently gotten their wish without wishing upon the eternal dragon. And this is a complex idea. I want to start by basically talking about the ego, right? The way that they come together is that Bulma wants to have the perfect boyfriend. And Yamcha is so egocentric that in the previous episode he was struggling to do anything. And we see that he overcame that and ultimately defeated the shadow by being able to overcome his egocentrism to be able to look foolish, be able to fail in front of Bulma, all of that. So what we have here is a lowering of the ego. As the ego's been leveled now in the events of the last episode, Bulma and Yamcha can look at each other through a more grounded, realistic lens. They see each other for the value that they have, because they've taken themselves off of their pedestals. And I think that's why you chose this image as well. The kneeling at the altar. I was trying to find an
It's
ancient
the subordination, right?
as well. There's an ancient marriage ritual as well where you hold you basically
right. We were looking for that.
hold
I
a candle
remember,
above each other as you're basically swearing your
that
vows to
may
each other.
even be better because it's like raising something above yourselves instead
Yeah.
of subordinating yourself to something.
We didn't see a good image
There's
for
a
that,
nuance in
but
that.
this is, and I'm coming off the cuff. I don't remember where this originated, but there is a rite of holding a candle above your heads together. You both grasp the candle and hold the light above yourselves as you pledge yourselves to each other, and it's lowering yourself. It's lowering your ego so that you can see each other for the value that lies within. And this is what happens to Bulma and Yamcha. They have, in the absence of that construct of ego, they now realize that they had what they wanted all along. Not all along, but without needing to speak to the Dragon of Chaos and ask for it.
Right. They're able to see the potential in each other because of the process that they've gone through in the Rebus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's specifically because the events of the past episodes, what you were saying, the subordinating of the ego and the I want to say raising up of the ideal, perhaps.
So this is where I can sort of start transitioning here into this image on the right, which is the alchemical rebus, or sometimes called the prima materia. And I'm going to work up from the bottom up on this image and sort of explain a bit what's going on. It's probably a little bit obvious, but we have the round chaos that flies. Looks a lot like the golden snitch from Harry Potter for good reason, though it doesn't represent the same thing. We have the numbers 4 and 3 in alchemy representing all of physical and spiritual matter. So we have earth, air, wind, and fire, body, mind, and spirit, totaling up to 7, and that's the totality of experience. Perched upon that flying round chaos is the dragon, the eternal dragon, you could say in Dragon Ball. Standing upon that serpent.
I do want to say it's a managed dragon.
This is a dragon that's been conquered.
Yes.
In this image. The
managed
image is trying...
was not a good word.
Managed. We have the manager and assistant manager here standing upon the dragon of chaos. Oh my God. No, there's... So, and it's good that you pointed that out, because the eternal dragon sort of is a representation of the fact that the dragon is never truly managed, that you're always in a process of managing the dragon. You're always in the process of confronting the dragon.
Well, I think that's what that fire is, right?
Right.
It's like even still in a vanquished state, the dragon is still spewing fire.
Right. And also the 7 Dragon Balls representing the gold that the dragon guards, right? So we showed Bilbo earlier, bringing that back. And the wisdom is also the gold. So this is the wisdom that the chaos is guarding from you. Stepped upon that is the hermaphroditic mercurial being, is the best way that I can put it. And it's basically all of masculine and feminine potential. So this is sort of telling you that all of masculinity and all of femininity has the potential to confront this thing. This
it's
unknown
almost an anthropological
chaos.
being, just like a human being.
Yes, this is all of human, right?
Yes.
This is supposed to represent you.
Yeah.
Regardless, and this is what's so amazing to me is that these alchemical ideas, they're not like what people would tell you is sexist. They're actually very balanced, and they're saying that
Almost
there's an equal value
balanced,
between the masculine and feminine, right? And you can see that in the symbols now working up. You've got on the right there, you have Saturn, and I believe it is... Wow, I just looked these up, but I'm trying to remember. I don't want to mislabel these. So we got Mars and Venus on the left.
Yes.
And I believe we have
Mercury at the top.
Saturn and Jupiter on the right.
Right, yep.
And then you have Mercury there at the top between them. Mercury being complicated. But I want to point out that there's a masculine and feminine duality to both of those symbols on the left and right. Where the left, I'm going to leave alone. I don't want to get into astrology or anything, but the Mars and Venus is just masculine and feminine. It's very simple. On the right is a bit tougher. I would say it's more like dominion and potential. I don't want to go deep into it, but these are more complex ideas. Of course, you have the sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine again, and then you have Mercury. Mercury
is a merger.
Is like the synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
Mercury in Chinese alchemy is associated with the dragon, fluidity, flexibility, traveling, motion. And so then you can say, okay, well, that sounds a little bit like traveling sounds like a path, like the way. And then we can bring the image all together there. At the center, the self, which I think is associated more what I would associate with Mercury, because I kind of think of Goku there.
What about what they're holding? One thing we've missed is what they're holding. So on the male side has a compass.
Right.
And what about the female side? What does that have? What is that?
What's the name of the tool? It's like it's not protractor, but it's
like a right angle?
It is essentially,
I don't know.
Well, it's associated with spatial geometry. That's sort of my interpretation of it, right? It has to do with the principles of mapping, right? So
right, but exactly, and that's what I just wanted to get to.
It's very difficult. I'm trying to
what's the action?
Come up with a really quick way to explain how it works.
Well, this is what conquers the dragon is what they're holding. The action of mapping on the masculine side, and I'm not sure what that tool is though on the right side.
Well, this is a quick and dirty explanation. I can get into it a little bit, but I think that it'll take too long to try to associate it. But I would tie it into the dragon radar, right?
Yes. Okay.
So on the feminine side, you have the ability
it's a triangle. It's a triangulation.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's spatial, but it's also geometrical.
Right, and it's these mergers of these two spirits that allows the conquering of the dragon, etc.
Yes.
Go ahead. You're almost done with this.
I'm thinking
analysis.
symbolically, right? So
You're going.
Think dragon radar. So all of that, right? So we have now an image of the masculine and the feminine coming together to conquer the dragon of chaos, to be able to get the gold, to bring the wisdom back to society, and it's all there within the egg, right? The egg representing all of potentiality, and potentiality is something that we've talked a little bit about. It's not really talked that much about more recently, but potentiality, think of it like a concrete idea, something that is something almost that you could interact with. I've heard the self sort of defined as all of potential you throughout all of time, and potentiality is sort of an expression of that idea. So this is to say that within potentiality, within potential, is this: the conquering, the gaining of the wisdom, the mapping of what you need to do, the boons from the masculine and the feminine, your ability to recognize that which is the logos or the Tao or the way that you're seeing there represented through Mercury and the dragon. And all of that laid on what appears to be a gray background, which is created by the lines. My interpretation of it being gray, of course, is that it's non-dual. It is disparity. This is sort of the natural world without enlightenment, and then within enlightenment,
without morality, right? Because animals don't have that.
Well, you could say within enlightenment, right? The white egg, the light, is this potential. Okay, so I think that's the fastest I could try to compress what's going on in this image.
Fast.
So all of Dragon Ball, all of season 1 of Dragon Ball, and what is happening thematically is contained in this one alchemical image. And that's why I've been rattling off about alchemy, because these ideas are ancient.
Right, and it's not just that these two people at the bottom on the left-hand side and the Bluma and Yamcha, like, it's not that they love each other or subordinate themselves. It's not just that. Because once that happens and the ego is subordinated, that is when you can awaken a kingdom. And you can bring that light back from what you've discovered to society. And that's kind of what we're trying to hit on with this episode. And in this example here, in the background, I have a panel from Berserk, or I guess it's from the anime probably. But it's when they return, Griffith returns, and everyone celebrates. And Griffith really is a Chad at that point, right? Bringing that light that he's discovered back with him.
Right. I mean, that's what makes him like a Lucifer figure, of course.
Right. And here in the top left-hand corner, We have Aurora being much like Bluma, awakened by the masculine spirit, right? And the awakening of that, the joining of their spirits, is what awakens the two kings, right? They're asleep. The whole kingdom is asleep. And then that's when the film is able to come to
Right.
an
You could
end.
say they're asleep, or that their eyes are closed, or that they're blind. It all is not conscious, not aware, not awake.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's how someone would cure that malaise in a kingdom, I suppose.
And we've already established that this is part of Goku's story as well.
Right. And I mean, it's going to be extrapolated.
Now, Goku's not as old as
Ooh.
Yamcha, obviously, so it's not necessarily part of his story yet, but we've already
But
established
this is the
that
basic story.
He's learning the story right now in the first season.
Remember, I've been trying to argue that Dragon Ball is a story for like today's age. This is setting up the groundwork of conflicts and hierarchies that have happened in the past, right?
Mhm.
And this encompasses a lot of that, as we just covered. As we get further and further along, though, we're going to see how those hierarchies are expanded. And we're going to go all the way to Z with this, people. So stick around.
Oh, yeah. We might even go to the Cell Saga.
So anyway, the next thing we see is the way, right? We've seen the joining of these two spirits, and so now Goku can again call his cloud, and somehow, miraculously, I would say, Yamcha's like, oh, I suddenly have this plane.
Oh, all along he just had a plane in his pocket.
It's not because, I just discovered the value of equal reciprocation and all that we just talked about.
It's not like he just stepped on the dragon.
Yeah, it's not like he just joined Bluma and stepped on the
And
dragon.
again, we're talking about the way associated with Mercury, the symbol in that alchemical image, right between the male and
Fluidity,
female heads.
movement, yes.
Travel,
exactly,
flexibility.
and it is that it allows them to travel. And so we see here they both get on and they're ready to go and they're ready to join their next hierarchy. Everyone's happy. It's a good ending for the first season. I would say it's very deliberately planned out by Toriyama and encompasses so many of those basic archetypal symbols that we're able to then in the next, and especially in the next coming sagas, we're going to be able to explore that more.
Yeah, this is all the foundational work that we need to be able to.
It's almost a perfect foundation. I don't know.
It's really good.
I don't know of a season one that sets this up so well and continues it on. And I know, like, apparently it wasn't commercially successful in season one, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. That doesn't really matter.
No, I mean, well, this is art. This is
art, exactly.
I think this is an expression of reality from Toriyama.
And so we do get to the end here, and this is kind of all of our characters wrapped up from season one. Is there anything you want to say, just kind of cap things off?
Yeah, maybe we can go a little bit over the topics that we've talked about here in season one. We've hit a lot of stuff, and we've tried to condense it as much as we can. We started off with season one. We talked a bit about culture. We talked about the archetypes within culture and how they manifest themselves, and the impetus for Toriyama to create something representative of his own culture within this medium, right? Within anime, within manga. We have talked about Genesis, chaos, the fall from ignorance into knowledge,
The
into
masculine,
wisdom,
the feminine, the blind
being created
father,
from that. We've
speaking magical words.
talked about the role of magic words and how they move
Yeah.
the world around you. We have talked about the ego palace.
The importance of verbalizing your wish.
We've talked about Jungian psychology with the anima and the animus.
We've talked about the fool. There he is right there, back in his communist
We
uniform.
talked about how the fool precedes the hero. We talked about the pitfalls of the nobility of the prey, I guess you could say. The claim to virtue based upon prosecution.
And we've even talked about the French Revolution. So we've done a lot this season.
We have arrived here at essentially this. Well, it's like that image. It's that full circle. It's the egg. The image is all tied up together into sort of these disparate elements that all come together to paint. I think it's a pretty beautiful picture.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I never should have said we should skip season one. I'll take it back right now. But that is our show today, ladies and gentlemen. We have covered season one of Dragon Ball from Myth and Meaning. Season 2 will be even better. Be on the lookout for it, but we're going to take a small hiatus on that because we need to catch up on Get the Mic. I'm your host on the left, Owl.
I'm your host on the right, Brok.
And if you like what you saw, give us a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next time.